Ronald Reagan once said the 10 scariest words in the English language are hello, I'm from the government, I'm here to help. Well, that's exactly what's happening with our city council. They're here to help. It's time for some straight talk. McLendon-Chisholm, I'm Bunker Bob, and this is the Bunker Bob Show. Yes, good Tuesday, almost afternoon to everyone. It is good to have you here, Bunker Bob here, and it is a full show today because I'm going to be bringing on the Iron Lady herself. That, of course, is Adrienne Balkum onto the show, and of course, she's always a favorite whenever she comes on because she always has some great things to add to this show. And specifically, we're going to be focusing on what is the boondoggle of what is coming up in the tax rolls to pay for public safety that is really outrageous when you look at the real numbers. Now, what are we talking about? Of course, they're going to tonight at tonight's city council meeting. There's going to be a public hearing on the tax rate. It's the first of two public hearings, and that public hearing is going to focus on specifically the proposed tax increase that the city council is bringing forward. And of course, if you want to know what that is, that would be in the Rockwall Hilarious banner. Of course, you've seen that if you read this propaganda machine, that's what I consider it. But they're wanting to raise the tax rate what appears to be 1.5 cents, and which is a absolute ruse. It's not 1.5 cents at all. In fact, when you look at the real numbers, we're talking about 4 cents increase, because if you see there, what you're looking at is the effective rate. That's the same amount of money that it would require to raise the same amount of money from last year, not including the new property that's been built in the city. The rollback rate, that's the reason why that's less than the effective rate is simply because we were protected from a rollback the last 2 years. In fact, when I was mayor, the city council together, we lowered the tax rate, and yet we were still focused on putting that money on the debt. Now, if you put money toward debt, then it is protected from a rollback. So instead of lowering the tax rate an insurmountable, several cents, we just pretty much put it at a flat 15 cents. Then the next year, again, the same thing. Did not raise the tax rate, but because of the new builds, new housing coming in, the new tax revenue that was coming in through new properties, and because of the valuation of homes that all of us have experienced, all of our homes are being increased in value tax-wise. The value of our homes, I should say, are being evaluated. Are being assessed. I keep using evaluated, are being assessed at an astronomical rate, the increase on all of our homes, which basically means you keep the tax rate where it is, and if the value of your home goes up, guess what? You pay more in taxes and more goes to the city. If the city council was serious about being fiscally conservative, and if they really believed in protecting you, the taxpayer, and if they really believed in fiscal responsibility, well, then the city council would most certainly focus on their attention on debt and trying to get rid of that debt so that we can have the opportunity to put money away and save it, which is what they're saying right now. Of course, I said on my last show, I talked about the fact that if you put money into savings, which is what they're trying to quote unquote do, put money into savings. We'll talk about that in just a minute. And we're basically going to make possibly 2% or 2%, excuse me, and yet your debt is 3%. You're paying 3% on your debt. How is this fiscally responsible to start trying to put money into savings while you still have this debt that is climbing at a greater rate than your savings? It just doesn't make sense, which is partly why I brought in the Iron Lady herself. Of course, that is Adrienne Balkum. And Adrienne, as always, you know what? I just realized one thing I need to do is turn on your mic, because there we go. Hold on, let me bring it back. This is something wasn't working earlier, and now it is. So we got it working, but I had turned something off. So, Adrienne, how are you? It's good to see you again.
It's good to see you too. Thanks for inviting me on the show. Yeah, I actually, I guess my main issue with the comments that are being made as a reasoning for the increase in the tax rate and funding, and the talks about, possibly putting monies aside for future equipment and other items. And then using the SAFER grant commentary from staffing reports to say that, well, since the fire department operations will be unable to continue at the same level of service because the SAFER grant expires in 2021 and 2022, then the city must fund an additional $252,000. Well, one of the things whenever we first started looking into starting our own fire department was, look, we had issues with call volumes and basically finding out what is the appropriate amount of money that we should be funding a fire department. And I don't see that happening. I think that the terminology and reporting is missing the whole purpose of starting this department to be fiscally responsible and to be conservative with our spending, and to evaluate what our community really needs. And, so when you say terms like, we're not going to be able to service you at this level of service, and what is that? What kind of peace of mind is that giving to our citizens that, that what they're not going to be able to answer a call? It's just ridiculous. And so I don't like how they're hiding this reasoning to increase the tax rate, and really when it comes down to it, when we start looking into the documents, we're seeing that there could be really, it's about keeping those employed and to increase in salaries and not managing the fire department budget.
Yeah, and you know what I think is, and that's kind of where I want to start, if because there's a lot that's been said regarding this whole increase in the tax rate. And of course, you have Nathan Hodges, the former mayor of McLendon-Chisholm, who weighs in on it through a Facebook post that he put up, and in it he focuses on and here's what he says. He says the increased cost to fund the newly acquired city-supported fire department, which again, as I talked about on the last show, the fire department has always been city-supported. It's always been city-funded. This is what he means, is that this is the city-owned fire department. But he says, and the expectation to keep the current level of service is one of the main factors considered in that proposed increase. Another consideration is to begin to plan long range for future fire equipment needs and eventual replacement of aging equipment within the department as required by regulations from the state. Now, on tonight's agenda, one of the items that you're going to see is this fund balance policy, and Adrienne, I'd like to together talk a little bit about that and focus on specifically this portion of it, which is the Capital Fleet Replacement Fund balance, and it says that the fire department apparatus and equipment as needed, and pay cash for needed capital rather than increasing or issuing new debt. The city's goal is to grow an amount equivalent to an amount required to replace. I missed that part, but this little thing that they're doing here is they're trying to create a policy, and you'll notice that the current balance is zero, but they're trying to create a policy that requires there to be a reserve that is that meets a certain standard, so that they can fund the fire department and future fire issues. Isn't it true, and Scott Turnbull will probably be with us either on our next show or next week, but isn't it true that the cost, the actual cost for the fire department this year compared to last year, the budget is actually lower for the fire department?
Okay, I say that one more time. You broke up.
Yeah. So is the fund, what they budgeted for the fire department last year compared to this year, is it more or less? And if so, how much more or how much less? Do you know?
That's going to be Scott Turnbull's thing, because I'm still waiting on some reports that I'm needing from Lisa that I'm looking at.
Yeah, when I looked at the budget, but when I looked at the budget and I looked at last year's budget and actual, and this year's budget and actual, it's actually less than last year, is what they're proposing. But they're saying that this is all about protecting the fire department, and building the fire department.
Yeah, I think it's going into staffing is where the increases are.
Okay.
There's money that's going there. But as far as operating the department, we spent money on the major equipment that we needed, which was less than $200,000 is what we were expecting to spend on 3 vehicles. And then we made we contributed monies to go to repair and improve the structure for the station that they're utilizing right now.
Yeah, so this is to me a way for them to for the city actually I think it's the fire chief that's driving a lot of this as well, but the city council to basically create a facade for their tax rate increase are going to say that this is all about the fire department, when in fact it's really not. But there's some issues that are going on with the fire department. Our current fire chief, who has, I guess, visions of grandeur for growing our fire department, and actually Department of Public Safety is a better way for me to put it, don't you think?
Well, I don't disagree. It's like it's fundamentally what you're supposed to be doing at the city council is to, you need to hear you need to have expectations for your staff and making sure you're holding them accountable, and them showing you why they need XYZ for certain types of equipment and things of that nature. I mean, we did the due diligence of going through all the homework that was necessary to realize, okay, what did we really need to be able to start up a fire department? And so when I start seeing numbers that are over $600,000, I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. Like, that is, where are we getting these numbers from? So I think when it comes down to it is we need to have an extra eye on making sure that we are managing the department so it doesn't get out of control. It's nice to have nice things, but again, we are in a beautiful stage where we can actually think conservatively, do things the right way, don't get us in debt, that kind of thing, and basically, actually look at our call volume and look at what is it our district really needs. And so far, the call volume is definitely EMS. It's definitely medically related, the types of calls that we have. We just don't have that many structure fires. And another thing that they're doing in these call reports is that they're combining all the fire together, and it's very frustrating for me because I did a huge pivot table / matrix document dating back to 2015, where you can analyze all the information from what time a call came in, what type of call type it is, whether that was inside the city and all that, and you can see over a course of time. I mean, we're not talking like within the city limits. We're talking about maybe on average about 150 calls a year.
Yeah,
it's
and we're a city. You got to remember, we're a city of people. Have to remember that we're a city of 2,500 people, and we're not talking about it. The next smallest city to us is Royce City, and I think they're at 18,000. And it was just 2 years ago that their budget matched ours. They spent what, $150 more than we did on fire protection. And so we're talking about a very small city, but the biggest issue for me, there's two issues that you highlighted. The first one is that these calls are EMS related, and we can talk about that. But the biggest issue is that our city fire department the city makes up just 1/3 of the total fire district, where more than half of all the calls go outside of the city of McLendon-Chisholm. We're talking about real emergency calls. And those who live in the unincorporated area of the fire district contribute absolutely nothing to their fire safety. This is something that I started banging the drum on when I was mayor, when you were on city council, and I had made a proposal that those who are in the unincorporated area of the fire district, if they want to receive the level of service that the citizens of McLendon-Chisholm enjoy, then they need to start contributing and pay for it. Or we need to start billing them for service. And I'll never forget how many of the people who are currently on city council came out in appalled that we would actually charge people for emergency services. They don't really seem to care that if you get an ambulance ride today, guess what? They're going to be sending you a bill. If you get a helicopter ride to a hospital, that bill is going to be around $25,000. An ambulance ride is going to be what, around $3,000, something like that?
Yeah, I can actually testify to that. Yes, it's around 3,000.
Yes.
But even more so, even the fact that you brought up about the other part of the district, the unincorporated area, the outside the city limits, there is, we need, one of the things that's a struggle is getting that information and finding those solutions to be able to meet our budget and all that. And when you see there's a flat tire, or there's a hole in some, you're spending money. These reports that we should be getting from our fire chief, from our staff, should be detailing where a lot of our service is happening, so that you can make better decisions. Okay, this is why we need to start considering other options, not just increasing our tax rate because to continue to facilitate those types of services. Because it's not affecting our city. Our city, we are saying that we are serving our city because the taxpayers are paying for these types of services.
Boy, are we!
So when you use terms like level of service or whatever, it just really it's very frustrating. But there should be something on point for these people to start thinking. And I'm talking about city council, city staff. They need to be working towards, how are we going to be able to get funding from the unincorporated area? And like I said before, the answer is billing, and that's no different than what Rockwall County EMS does.
Yeah, but they just don't want to do it because a lot of those who are in the unincorporated area contributed mightily to their campaigns, and they don't want to make them mad. They're being paid off. These are people on the city council that are, I'm just going to use the word corrupt because that's what it is. When you violate the trust of the people and you put no focus on what's important to them, that's a corrupt way to run government. We'll talk about the EMS in a little bit because we have some slides to focus on there as well.
Go ahead.
But I want to focus. One of the things that I found interesting is that a lot of people are saying that, well, if we have this, or if we get this, or if we do that, that our ISO rating will improve, and if that improves, well, then that'll save us insurance, and that will help us mightily in that regard. So let's go through. This is I'm going to show the people who are our audience something that you created while you were on City Council, which I thought was really interesting, and I really want to focus on this portion of it, which is I want to start there. I want to kind of, if you would just walk us through this little chart. It really focuses on this ISO rating, the 4.9. Talk about that and what that means.
Well, the 4.9 is the rating that we received. That was, there was a recommendation given from the inspectors from the ISO, and I'll explain what that is. And it was approved by the state fire marshal's office. So, and so we are our PPC rating for our community is 4-9, and so. ISO is a New Jersey-based advisory organization, and they serve to they serves the property and casualty insurance industry by providing inspection services, insurance coverage from development, and statistical services. So they have offices out here in Dallas and Austin area, and so the PPC classification system, it stands for Public Protection Classification, and basically it's just a way to reflect a community's local fire protection, and it's used sometimes whenever insurance are doing rate. So,
Adrienne, you're starting to cut out. There you are.
Best rating that you can get in a community.
Adrienne, you're cutting out.
Okay,
Adrienne. Can you hear me?
We'll look at your
Adrienne
town class rate.
Can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Yes. Okay. Now we can hear you. So you were cutting out. So
I can hear you.
So the the PPC systems. We heard about ISO, the PPC system. Talk about that real quick.
Yes, the PPC stands for Public Protection Classification, and so what it is the insurance services offices reflect a community's local fire protection for property insurance rating purposes. And so what it does is that insurance companies use this rating, and it could actually give you money back, I guess, or decrease your cost of insurance between $50 or $300 a year. And so not every insurance company uses it, but they primarily use claims in the area. But it's a good thing. It's one of those economic incentives for a city to get inspected, and it's a pass on a benefit for residents who have insurance. And so a city would want to be inspected. And the last one that was done in 2012, and it was published in 2013, the 4-9. And I will say that the rating before, when they had an inspection, it was done at the rating was 7.9. So we have improved. So that's kind of, and so basically the 4, I want to tell what does the 4 stand for. The first number refers to the classification of properties within 5 road miles of a fire station and within 1,000 feet of a credible water supply. And the second number, which is the 9, applies to properties within 5 road miles of a fire station, but beyond 1,000 feet of a credible water supply.
Okay, so ultimately, what what I find fascinating is that we got our ISO rating, this 4.9 in 2013. The last inspection was done in 2012. We got our rating in 2013. And this was when we were an all volunteer fire department. This was when we had an old fire truck, and it was all volunteer. And so then we started paying. I think it was 2015, right? When we started paying a fire chief or fire some of the fire personnel.
Yeah, we started increasing the fire budget dramatically for the next several years.
Starting in 2015.
But one thing to say is that
yeah, go ahead.
Even though that we had this done, since we had this done in 2012, the inspection, then it was published in 2013, and it was all volunteer at that time. At that time, when you're looking at the report, and you're going through all the information, I mean, there's things that you could tell, like, okay, there could be improvements that in the area, from the water, from the hydrants to the types of people that were on staff, because all of these things create points for your inspection, and so I believe that once, one of the things that we were trying to encourage for a city-owned department is that we want TCFP certified people. We want to have the training. We want to have fire academies, and because we want to promote public safety through fire protection, understanding like how to be fire preventative in your home, and understanding the value of making sure that we're not only educating people, but also making sure that we are doing everything that we can to manage our equipment to be operationally good. And because that's one of the things, it's not having the best, it's great that we have like the top of the line, equipment, like I'm talking like for an apparatus, but the main thing is a fire station. You can have a really, really nice fire station, but that fire station is not going to save a person's home. It's the equipment and that staff and the water supply, and obviously in the communication. And so those are the types of things, those main four things are what is going to help in our credit rating. Or not credit rating, town class.
And since we've become a 24/7 fire department, since we've done all of these things, we have still not, we've not improved our rating. We've not gotten an inspection. And so these are the things that I think citizens should understand, that even though like I said in my opening, Ronald Reagan said that the 10 scariest words in the English language are, hello, I'm from the government and I'm here to help. This is what the city council is trying to pass on to the citizens of McLendon-Chisholm. Look, we are trying to improve your safety, when the reality of this whole thing is that's simply not the case. We're not seeing any improvement in our first of all, our ability to fight fires, but also we're not seeing a greater need for all of this so-called equipment. And we'll talk a little bit about that as well. Did you want to say anything about this, about the anything else that's on the on your sheet?
I think just the main thing is, when we're talking about the fire station location, we're talking about 5-mile radius. I think, we kind of like, it would be helpful to kind of see a visual.
Yeah, let's do that. But before we go there, so we're jumping ahead just a little bit. So I want to start by focusing on when you talk about the fire station, you had brought this to my attention. You brought this. What I'm showing right now is the agent, Aaron H. Wright, who is the director and the consultant for the state of Texas for the TxDOT, I should say, because TxDOT, when it as it's planning to expand 205, is going to be taking out basically the fire station, and there's the amount of property that is on the fire station. There are homes in Sonoma Verde that have more property than our current fire station does. So if that gives you some perspective on how little land is there and is going to be left. So the state of Texas has basically said, had a consultant come out, look at the fire department, because one of the things that you had highlighted that I want to make sure that people are seeing is that this consultant had something very interesting to say, and I did a pull quote of this, but what he says is overall the the apparatus and equipment appear to be up to date and in conformance with what the standards of the city and TxDOT are to build a fire station. So let's start there. The equipment that we have is adequate for what we need. While the fire department, while the city council is going to start making, trying to argue that the equipment itself is outdated, that it's in disrepair, that's simply not true. Again, let me remind citizens that in 2013, when we had an all-volunteer fire department, a truck that broke down constantly, and all volunteers, we had a 4.9 rating, ISO rating. Today, we have a 24/7, 7 day a week, 365 a year fire department. We have, how many trucks do we have right now, Adrienne?
We have 7.
We have seven trucks. I think 4 of those are actual fire trucks, or maybe 5 of them are. But we have plenty of equipment, and we're still at a 4.9. So when people tell you, "Hey, this is important. We have to have this equipment to get these ISO ratings," they are lying to you. And we're going to talk about that in a second. But as Adrienne, now we can go into what you wanted to talk about, which is the location of the fire station that the state of Texas is proposing to build. This has been somewhat of a controversial, because some people are saying they want to keep it right where it is, which is an impossibility. You couldn't. There's just not enough land there to build the fire department that is required by the state of Texas based upon TCFB standards, yada, yada, yada. So there's one other option, and that other option is, Adrienne, why don't you talk about that?
Well, it's going to be at the City Hall property.
Yeah.
And mainly because, we have the land. They need, in the report, it was talking about the size and scope of this particular new station that they're proposing. To meet fire department codes. I mean, I'm talking basic standard codes, because right now we don't have that going on in the current fire station that's off of 205. But they're talking about possibly 2 to 3 acres, and we have that at the City Hall property. And basically, that the new fire station, or MCFR, needs to be fully operational before they tear down the current location off of 205. So, and you have to remember too that if you saw the TxDOT report back in 2018, it was an environmental study. We knew that it was one of the 9 structures that was going to be torn down, and in the expansion of 205. And so there's just not going to be enough space for this for a basic standard fire station to be located there.
Yeah, and
but this report that they're giving.
Go ahead.
Sorry, this report that they're giving is not based on they're not doing an assessment on the land. This is just on the actual, what we would need for a standard fire station.
What's interesting and fascinating about what this report shows is that the fire station needs between 2 and 3 acres. And it was Gary Moody, Steve Hatfield. These guys basically said, "Well, we need 15 acres for future growth of our government." These are, remember, you got to understand the mindset of big government liberals. Well, it was, of course, Gary Lovell who basically back then, this was in 2015. Who basically said, "No, I don't think we need 15 acres. I think all we need is 5 acres." And the person, the owner of Triple Creek Development, was giving the city, wink, wink, some land, and gave us 2 acres and offered us an additional number of acres for $20,000 an acre. And so that was the debate. How many more acres do we need? And Gary Lovell said, "I think that most we need is 5 acres." And of course, that's what they voted on and approved. And yet that is not what they ended up with, because when Gary Lovell went to went on vacation to Mount Rushmore with his family, a long-planned vacation, and another member of council also did the same, and they were absent on vacation. The city council came back and said, we're gonna buy another 10 acres, like we said before, and behind the backs of the conservatives, that gave us 15 acres. So now we have 15 acres of property. And do we really need it? No, we don't. Especially when you consider and when you see what we're talking about, what the text dot is proposing building for us, and we'll talk about that in a second. But I just find that fascinating that even text dot said all you need is 3 acres. This is big government liberalism. This is why I was so opposed to it. But I want to focus real quick. I just highlight what's on the map that we have here. That this is again another piece that you, as a member of City Council, put together, and I think it is important that citizens know that. And this is something you did on your own as a member of City Council. You actually did work, by the way. I mean, this City Council, they just do whatever the people who are pulling their strings tell them to do. But here's what I find interesting. You're focused, these circles you see, MCVFD, that's the volunteer fire department. That's the current location of the current fire station. The MCVFR, that is the city-owned fire department that we have now, and that dot shows where City Hall is. And if you look, and what I love about what you did, Adrienne, is you basically put Balkum's home. Okay, let's start there. This is a location deployment from MCVFR or MCVFD, and you put Balkum's home. That's Sonoma Verde. So if you're in Sonoma Verde, that's you're in Balkum's home area. And the blue is how far the fire department is from this neighborhood, and the red is how far the current fire department is. And so the question and the issue really is you've got to be within 5 miles of a fire department to get the ratings that you need. And what you've done is you have shown empirically the distance between both fire station the current station and the proposed fire station. And if you'll notice, I mean, Quail Creek, where I live, is on there. Kensington is on there. Green Hollow, Paddock, Chisholm Trail, Briar Glen, Kingsbridge, even Lakeshore Church is there, and the Oasis is there. Chisholm Baptist Church is there. Everything that you would expect to see on something like this is there. And what does it show? It shows that everyone is within that 5-mile radius if they put the new fire station at City Hall. So I wanted to highlight that, and again, thank you, Adrienne, for putting that together. Now, this is something that I think that the next thing I want to show is what the state of Texas, the text dot, and the consultant has proposed. And it is our understanding. This is what the city council is favoring, and tonight they're going to be passing a resolution to approve it. But the state of Texas is proposing this. And this is the building the rendering of a building that would be the new McLendon-Chisholm Volunteer Fire Department. Understand, this is being paid for by the state. I find it fascinating. You got to be real careful. Some of the rhetoric that's going around in the city by city officials is, taxpayers don't have to pay for this. When in reality, taxpayers are paying for it. If you pay taxes in the state of Texas, you will be paying for this. So don't say, and I hate it when people say, well, this is free. It's not free. The state of Texas is paying for it. It's free to the city. The city doesn't have to pay for it, but taxpayers in the city, just like everyone else in the state of Texas, everyone in the state of Texas is contributing to this proposed new fire station. And if you look at the inside, I mean, the schematic of this is just, I saw this and I nearly fell out of my chair. Look, this is enormous. This has 3 bays for 3 fire trucks. Oh, and by the way, it should be noted that everyone who has been lambasting Adrienne and Scott for buying for doing the lease to buy fire equipment when and me, by the way, when we had no choice but to start our own fire department. It should be noted that if we didn't have that equipment, TxDOT would have averaged out, and we would be looking at a 2-bay fire department, fire station, not a 3-bay fire station. So that's an important point. So yeah, did the fire equipment cost a little bit of money? You bet it did. We didn't have a choice. The volunteer fire department was not going to serve the city of McLendon-Chisholm. And guess what? We thought public safety was a priority. We weren't going to play politics with public safety, as the fire chief, the former fire chief, Robert Jones, liked to do, and the treasurer, Herman Larkin, who became member of the council, and the rest of this council. The Kippet, of course, Mark Kippet. We can't forget to thank Mark Kippet for all that he did to screw the taxpayers of McLendon-Chisholm and help get his wife on the city council. But I digress. This is the building that they are proposing, and would you like to know how much the state is going to be paying? Adrienne, why don't you fill us in on that?
It's over $4 million is what they're proposing. And the thing is, just to make sure that we correct some wordings, is that TxDOT is not actually building the building. TxDOT is going to be basically cutting a check for, I don't know if it's going to be quarterly or how they're going to do the monies, but they're going to be giving us monies for the architectural engineering and the actual construction of building the station. So yes, the monies, they are coming from TxDOT. They're not actually building it themselves. So, and we are going to be hiring, the city's going to be hiring an architect, engineer, but this is a kind of like a quote of what a standard station would look like.
Adrienne, can I just say one thing? You've been hanging around Scott Turnbull too long. I was telling my daughter yesterday, coming home from soccer practice. This is an aside that the people will appreciate. I love being around you and Scott. You guys are like an old married couple. I always talk about that, and I said that I explained to my daughter, who's 11 years old, that I said, Scott is the ultimate curmudgeon. And she said, well, what's a curmudgeon? I said, a curmudgeon is someone who will see, they will pick apart anything and kind of identify why you're wrong or something like that. I said, for instance, see the grass over there in that field? I said, I could tell Scott Turnbull, well, the grass over there is green. And he would say, well, actually, it's not true green. And if you'll notice, there's lots of patches of brown. And then the flowers there, those add different colors as well. So it's not really green. And my daughter said, good grief. I said, yes, now you know what I have to put up with. And then you just did the same thing with me. Well, TxDOT's not actually building it. The city is. Yeah, I get it. We're talking about taxes, taxpayers. What is it going to cost to build this thing? And the good news is the citizens of McLendon-Chisholm are free from this, because that was something that we were concerned about going forward, especially if we had kept the volunteer fire department. If the volunteer fire department was still in place, guess what? TxDOT would not be doing this. It is only because it is a city-owned fire station. So all of the liberal left who made it a focus of the campaign to get Keith Short and Jim Bloom and Herman Larkin elected and get me out of office because of what I was doing to build a fire department, just so you know, if we had done what Mark Kippet and Keith Short and Jim Bloom had wanted us to do, right now we would be saying, well, we need to be saving for a new fire department. And this, what the state is offering, is a $4 million department. Anything you want to add to that, Adrienne?
It's like 4.5, 300. Just kidding. But yeah, it's going to be over 4.5.
There you go again. Good for you.
Yeah.
All right. So
no, it really is honestly there's a lot of I was actually kind of surprised when I was looking through all the details of what they were estimating in this report. It's a very detailed report. I would recommend anyone to look at it. It's definitely built so that we can be able to expand as our community expands, So I think that that's important to note.
But let's be honest. I
And it's
mean,
definitely going.
let's be honest. I mean, when you look at the size of this fire station, you go over to Heath and look at the size of their fire station. Heath is handling the population of their city quite well with the size that they have. This is way over what we will ever hope to see in our city. Our city, if we build out to 6,000 or 7,000 people, of course, if the liberal left continues their pursuit to grow government and grow our city, we could be at 10 to 12,000. But let's just say that we were even at 10 and 12,000. This fire department would be still more than this city would ever need. Do you not agree?
I think it's definitely going to be adequate for our community, for sure. For sure for our district. So
yeah. All right. So the next question really comes down to down to this, and as we talked about it in the pre-show, if you will, how does this benefit the city? And Adrienne, one of the things that you brought out, it was you pulled out of one of the reports kind of the summary evaluation analysis of how we got where we are. And this was, I think, what we're seeing is this is from the 2012 report. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah. This is where the inspection, how they come up with, okay, so in this inspection, they rate they put in your credits, like how many, they say, okay, you get 5 credits for this item, or whatever. And then they tally it up. And this is basically the summary report of how they ended up giving us the rating that we have. And so, as you can see, it doesn't say like, okay, it has to be the latest model of an engine. It's about like the equipment being functional to fight a fire, and also you'll see on there about a ladder truck and all that. And one of the things too with a ladder truck is that you kind of work with your neighbor fire department, and they also get points too from sharing ladder trucks and all that. So I think that was kind of like what our gist of our conversation is that there's not really a huge need for us to have, a ginormous, latest model ladder truck, and it's just
this is important, folks. When you look at this, let me focus in on what you just talked about. Since you talked about fire, the ladder truck. Let me just go back real quick. See, at the very top, the left-hand side of this column shows you what we earned as a city and got credit for, and this is how much. And the right side is how much you could have gotten if everything was perfect. And in this case, when you look at this credit for ladder service, how is it that we got 1.6 rating out of 5 when the city of McLendon-Chisholm doesn't have a ladder service? And that goes to what the Iron Lady just talked about, and that is we have a mutual aid agreement with the city of Rockwall that does have, I think, 2 ladder trucks. And Adrienne, I mean, you were there. You spent time with this whole thing. When we were interviewing Jim Simmons to be the fire chief, we talked about the fact that the current fire chief, Robert Jones, when I asked him the question, what would it take for the volunteer fire department to become part of the city, his answer was, well, we first need a ladder truck. We need a ladder truck. When I told Jim Simmons this, he laughed out loud. He said, that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. You were there. You heard it. Am I correct?
Yeah.
He thought it was preposterous
in
a city that has no tall buildings. And in a city, and this is what's important, is that we as a city, we can control the size and height of buildings. Now, of course, we're going to have the Rockwall County Schools wants to put in elementary school and a middle school in our city. Guess what? The city can regulate And this is what's great about our open spaces. We have, what we have abundance of is land. So we don't have to go up. We can go wide. So we don't have to build a 2 or 3 story building. We can build 1 story, and even if we had a 2-story building, do you need a ladder truck? No, you don't need a ladder truck. But this is something they don't care about. They don't care to hear about this. But more importantly, they don't care about the fact that if we need a ladder truck, and this is what the fire chief in Rockwall said, if you need a ladder truck, just call us. That's what our mutual aid agreement is for, and that's why we got points on that. So I wanted to highlight this, and why am I saying that? Why would I go there? Am I going off on another tangent? Nope. I'm going on it because of this, and let me highlight what this is. This is from the fire chief, Jim Simmons. This is his apparatus replacement plan brief. You see, he has plans for our future, for our city. And he basically focuses on the cost for maintenance, often is increasing, our annual budget, how, as the apparatus becomes older, we need to replace them. One of the things that he liked to say in that is that, oh, by the way, if a fire truck is 20 years old, then it drops off the ISO rating chart, and it no longer we no longer get credit. Folks, we have 7 fire apparatus, and we're concerned that one of them is going to reach 20 years old. Folks, we have less than 1 structure fire per year. How much are we using this equipment in the first place? And don't forget, one of those fire engines was brand new when we got it in 2014, 15. And that's the one where the state of Texas paid for it, right? And the fire chief's brother became the quote-unquote grant writer, so he could get 20% of the $200,000 grant paid to the city. So he pocketed $20,000 for filling in a 3-page form, literally. Talked about this. If you haven't seen it, if you don't know what I'm talking about, watch The Knife-Wielding Man. Get educated. Know what's going on. This is a corrupt area a situation that we're in right now. So what is he saying? Replacement considerations of apparatus should include a number of factors. These factors included, but are not limited to, the wear and tear on vehicles, mileage of service hours, call volume, size of the district, safety considerations, age of vehicles. There he goes on that. But here's the anticipated replacement schedule for the apparatus and equipment is as followed. Engines 20-year replacement, new engine every 10 years. Folks, I want you to think about that. One of the things that Scott Turnbull was talking to Adrienne and I about this morning before we came on, he was saying, the city of Dallas goes through fire trucks, every 10 years. Because they work those trucks, those trucks are worked to the ground. Not to the ground, but they work those trucks hard because they have so many fires. If the city of McLendon-Chisholm were to buy one of those trucks, it would be 10 years old, and you'd get 10 years out of it. And that because of the number of fire calls that you get, it would more than suffice for what we need as a city. But no, our fire chief wants you and me, he wants us to pay for new trucks every 10 years. What else is he saying? He's saying that we need brush trucks every 10 years, specialty vehicle every 10 years, staff command and staff command vehicles every 10 years. Folks, this begs the question. How fiscally responsible is our city council if they're going to embrace this kind of nonsense? We do not need new vehicles every 10 years. We can get used vehicles and pay a heck of a lot less for them when we need them. But here's what really gets my goat. And this is the future possible needs. He says that look what I've underlined here. Increased calls in EMS may need to consider possible quick response EMS vehicle. Homes built with deep setbacks. City. That's what I wanted to focus on was the quick response EMS vehicle, folks. EMS calls. Let's get educated again on EMS calls. You see, what our fire chief is trying to do is he wants to create a big bureaucracy. He wants to create a big kingdom for himself. That's why he wants more fire trucks. That's why he wants better fire trucks. That's why he wants more money. And remember, on EMS calls, this is true for the city of Rockwall, for the city of Royce City, Fate, Heath, and McLendon-Chisholm. It doesn't matter if those who are on your fire trucks are registered paramedics. Because of the Emergency Services Board, the county board, the Emergency Services Corporation Board, I should say, has a contract with Rockwall County EMS. If you have a paramedic on your fire truck, guess what? The only thing they can do is perform basic life-saving skills. They can do CPR, those types of things. Only the Rockwall County EMS is authorized to perform medical. They're the only ones who can administer drugs. Why? Because it is a liability issue, and the county has taken on that liability. You have to have a doctor on call to do this. How do I know this? Well, because I served on the Emergency Services Corporation Board when we renewed the contract with the Rockwall County EMS. You see, before I was on the board, the Rockwall County EMS had no standards. They could take as much time as they wanted to get to a call, pretty much, and they not as much time as they wanted, but they had standards, but there was nothing to enforce those standards with. Well, we changed that, and for the new contract, they have to be, I think before it was 12 minutes to respond to a call. Now it's 8 minutes. And if they don't meet the 7 minutes, 59 seconds for the Scott Turnbulls out there, it's got to be 7 minutes and 59 seconds. If they don't respond in that time, then they get penalized some money. And it's not a little bit of money. It's quite a bit of money. We're talking thousands of dollars. And that hits Rockwall County EMS's bottom line. Bottom line in all of this. Chief Simmons wants to focus on the things that don't matter. Ladder trucks. He wants to build a paramedic ambulance service. I also want to highlight that the Rockwall County EMS, their guaranteed response rate is better than the city of McLendon-Chisholm's. But we're still going on emergency medical calls outside of our fire district. The McLendon-Chisholm Volunteer Fire Department should not respond to medical emergency calls to anyone outside of our fire district. Why? Because they do not contribute to their own fire safety. They contribute nothing. If they want that level of service where the McLendon-Chisholm Volunteer Fire Department responds, then they should pay for it. They should it's either an annual payment or they get billed for it. And until the city council is willing to stand up to those who are outside of our city, out of our city, the people who help fund their campaigns, I get why they don't want to stand up to them, why they don't care about being fiscally responsible. Until that happens, and until they rein in this fire chief, who, by the way, is not he and Adrienne, we've talked about this, and Scott, we talked about it with Scott Turnbull as well. I mean, he wants to build he wants to be a fire chief. He wants to be a hybrid department. And his point is, well, it's cheaper to have a hybrid department where you have police and fire, where a police officer does fire work and fire department or firemen, firewomen. They're also acting as a police department. That's cheaper if you need a police department. Why would our city ever be stupid enough to get into the police department business? Because these are big government, tax and spend liberals. This is why the 4-cent tax rate increase, that's what this is. If they want, is what's being put on the table. This is 4-cent tax rate increase. Before we were focusing on putting it in debt, that's why it was free from a rollback. Right now, what they're proposing is a 16.5-cent tax rate, which is truly more than 4-cent tax rate increase. And if you ask me, we should all gather around, and the next time they talk about that this is all for emergency services, look at the budget, folks. The next time they talk about that this is all for emergency services, when they haven't demanded those who are in the unincorporated area contribute to their own fire safety, when they're not willing to do that, they have no right to raise our tax rate one iota, not a scintilla. Our tax rate should be at 12 cents, less than 12 cents. That's what they should be proposing. Since they don't want to pay off the debt, they shouldn't have the ability to pay to buy more stuff and put it into a savings account so they can buy it, spend it on things later. Adrienne, any final thoughts from you?
Well, that's I think at the end of the day that what things that we need to be, we have 2 public hearings in regard to the budget and the tax rate and all that. And I think that there's a lot of questions that we should be asking. Number one is like, you're talking about, putting money aside for all of these wonderful emergency vehicles, or even, funding for the fire department to keep at the quote unquote level of service, whenever really we should be making sure we're managing what our current service is. And if that means that we'll have to, manage that budget to where it, cut some staffing, then that's what needs to happen. But again, you can't just like wave a magic wand and say, okay, we'll just go ahead and pretend that didn't happen and just keep on increasing the budget, because it's defeating the purpose of why we started the department in the first place, and that was to manage our budget with conservatively, and also finding solutions. We should be really working to make sure that we are being good stewards, or they should be working as being good stewards for our city, and making sure that all of our monies are coming to the city. And if there is any financial solutions, they should be investigating that instead of, okay, let's go ahead and raise the tax rate because of this, which is not a factual statements.
So
That's
true.
how I look at it.
So true. I appreciate you being on the show today again. It's always great to have you with me, and I look forward to next time when we can do this again, because you really do add so much. You and Scott together add so much to the show, folks. I did, I've gone back and forth as to whether or not I should talk about this with you, and in the end, I think it's okay. But I realize there are going to be people out there who think this is really stupid of me to talk about. But this morning, when I went running with my 2 dogs, one of them stopped and collapsed and had a heart attack. And by the time I got him to the hospital, he was gone. And I realize that there are some people who don't really have a love for animals. I do. Most conservatives that I know do. And this has hit me harder than I thought I would. It has been a tough day getting ready for the show and getting everything together. This was my daughter's dog. He was only less than 3 years old. His name was Dobby, and he was one of the best dogs that we've ever had, and I really do miss him. And those of you who have experienced this kind of loss understand the pain that goes into this. And it gets me thinking that we want to live here because we love the open spaces, and the last thing that Dobby was doing was running in these open spaces and enjoying the beauty. We were still seeing stars by that time in the morning because we run very early, and I'm just grateful to live in a community like this where we have the ability to run our dogs and have the freedom to run around. The picture that you see behind me is of my daughter and her dog Dobby. That this is something that we just don't know that we could ever replace. So anyway, if you would send a prayer out to us this week, that would be great. Campbell is my daughter's name, is the name of my daughter. and she's obviously devastated over this as well. But anyway, we keep on, we charge forward, and continue to move onward. I hope that the information that you get from this show is helpful, and I remind you that if you want to stay abreast of what's going on, join the now hundreds of people who have become subscribers to this show, so that you're made aware and can be notified when we are going live and when we've recorded a show, so that you can be up to date. So I hope that if you're going to the city council meeting tonight, that you've got things to ask this city council about, questions that they should be answering before they approve any tax rate increase. And I doubt you'll get any answers, but we should all, as many people as can, come out and voice your opinion and tell them that you do not elect them to grow the size and scope of our government, but to preserve and protect the size of the open spaces and limit the size and scope of our government, which is what I do on this show and in the purpose of what I do. So I hope you have a great day, and I look forward to being with you next time. So until then, have a great one. Bye-bye.